are we really experiencing our experience accurately and authentically? And that sounds a little odd, but I want to bring in a couple of concepts: epigenetics and neural image. And I know those are kind of strange terms, but they're really the key to health and wellness and how well we can function or how badly we function as human beings. Human beings consist of somewhere around the neighborhood of about 50 trillion cells, and those cells are organized into communities. Like cells make up tissues that make up organs and glands, and those organs and glands are organized into systems. And from the organs and glands and systems, we get different functions like respiration, elimination, your immune system, your endocrine system for hormonal control, and so forth. But all of these things are, all of these different, the systems or the glands and organs are really dependent on the individual cell function. So 25 years ago when I was in school, we were taught a thing called genetic determinism. And it said the male and the female chromosomes get together, they come together, form a fertilized egg, and that they form a genetic makeup in there that literally is written in stone. It's going to be static and produce certain behavior and traits and patterns throughout our entire life. But now the new cell biology refutes this and said that's really not the way it's working. They're saying that the genes are really dynamic. They're in there, and depending on environmental signals coming through, they can actually change architecture and shape and spin off a new cell that's better adapted to our life circumstance with a changed genetic expression, or can spin off or cause a different functional reaction or release of a neurotransmitter or hormone or something like that to cause some change in the function of the body as part of that adaptation process. So when we take a look at these signals coming through and how the genes change, they're subjected to what's called epigenetic control. Epi meaning above, genetic genes, so above the genes on the cell wall. There are like little switches in there, and the switches can get turned on and off depending on the signals coming through. So different things you're doing, how you're eating, how you're moving, how you're thinking, can actually trip the switches positively or negative. You can actually, one cell can actually create cancer, or it can stop it, or it can create a different disease process, or it can stop it. So basically, this epigenetics is vitally important because the switches get tripped on and off depending on our lifestyle choices and the things that we're doing day in and day out, and things that we're subjected to, toxins, or whether we're providing the body with the sufficient amounts of what it needs to function correctly. A lot of the patterns of behavior and how we learn to function throughout our life is developed from the time from birth to about 6 to 7 years old, when you're in what's called the hypnagogic phase. And during that phase, we're functioning not in full consciousness. We're like you and I, we're in alpha and beta ranges of full consciousness. These children are functioning in the delta and theta ranges. So they're like little sponges, and all they're doing is recording everything that's going on in their environment. How parents and teachers and people on TV and things that they're hearing on the radio, which is kind of scary with a lot of the negative messages coming across in the rap music and so forth nowadays. But basically, these kids are patterning the things that they're seeing in their environment, and it creates a behavior pattern of how they should function as human beings. So a lot of this stuff gets programmed early. So as we come back to our main concept of how we function as human beings, the switches are tripped. We may have a genetic predisposition for something, but it doesn't need to manifest. It only manifests if we have a genetic predisposition and we do the lifestyle choice that actually trips the switch in that direction and makes it happen. We can actually trip those switches off in the other direction if we do proper lifestyle choices and healthy choices that don't allow that disease process or that whatever to actually manifest. So the switch concept of the epigenetics is vitally important, and they are dependent on your lifestyle choices and how healthy you are making those choices. So now we have the signals coming in, tripping the switches, making the genes happen, rewriting the genetic expression. But we have to overlay something else, and that's called neural image. These signals can be coming through, but they can actually get altered in the process. So if we diagram this out for you, let's say we have a signal coming through. It sends a message through the nervous system, literally everything from external environmental cues to all of the millions of things that happen every second inside the body. All these signals are transferring through something like 3 trillion bits of information a second that allow us to maintain life. They all need a conduit to travel through. So it's like electricity has to have a wire to travel through to get to the light. These signals need a conduit, and in the human system, it's the nervous system that transfers these signals. So these signals come through the nervous system, they go to the cell wall, they hit the epigenetic control, they go in there and they make the genes perceive what's going on, and then that cell is going to spin off a new cell that's better adapted to what's going on in our life circumstance, or it creates some functional change, again by neurotransmitter hormone, or it produces some chemical to make something happen, and that functional aspect is designed to support and adapt to whatever was going on in the environmental cue to begin with. Now, as long as the signals are getting through clear, the genes get clear image, we're experiencing our experience authentically and accurately, and then we get proper adaptation, and we're in a healthy change state. What happens if these signals are interfered with? We have the signal coming through again. Now it comes through in a distorted state because something's interfering with it, and I'll explain that in a second. It gets to the cell. Now the genes get a message. It goes through the epigenetic control. The genes get the message, but they don't realize what's right or wrong. They just get the message they get. If it's a distorted message, they get a distorted message. Now they spin off a cell that they think is going to adapt to this, but it's actually based on a distorted message, and now it's inappropriate response to what happened in the first place, or whatever functional aspect is created. Again, it's distorted, and you're not in sync with your reality. And the more and more that we get a distortion of this reality and the adaptation process, the less we can function in an optimum state. So it's really important to make sure that these signals are getting through clear. So what is it that can interfere with these signals is when, from simple little things throughout life, the birth process, falls and slips and accidents, the jungle gyms, the skateboards, the rollerblades, the pillow fights, stress at work, stress with relationships, bad self-image, all these types of things can cause stress in the body. And when we have different 3 categories of stressors coming into the system, it can actually cause the spine to come out of alignment. So when the spine comes out of alignment, like slips and falls, accidents, and injuries, those are easy to think of. When you think about emotional aspects, when you get really stressed out about something, where do you feel it? When I ask this question in groups and audiences, you always see the hands come up to the neck and the back. We always feel stress build up in the muscles. All of these muscles are anchored into the spine. When they pull on it over time, they can pull it out of alignment. You pull the spine out of alignment over time, it stresses nerve tissue. Your spinal cord is your main superhighway of transfer of this 3 trillion bits of information a second, and then the nerve roots come out and carry information out to make things happen. When the neuroscientists have shown that when you stress nerve tissue, you alter the signals. You alter the signals, you get a distortion in the message. Now the distortion in the message comes through, hits the epigenetic control, goes into the genes are getting a distorted message, and now that whole cycle starts to break down. The more the cycle breaks down, the more we're out of what's called homeostasis, or balance of the different systems in the body. And the more out of homeostasis you get, the more breakdown you get, which leads to sickness and disease over time. So these spinal distortions and what we call a vertebral subluxation, which is a misalignment of the spine, putting stress on the nerve tissue, is a serious problem, and a lot of people don't have a clue what's going on. Years ago, we put up on a billboard and said if your spine was on your face, you'd take better care of it, because virtually very few people out there really understand how important that nervous system is to proper cellular function and overall function of the body. So when we get this distortion, this distorted neural image of itself, so the signal gets changed. So what we perceive is not really what happened, and then we have an inappropriate adaptation. We can't have health and wellness when we have a distorted neural image. So the output is dependent on the input. And so we want to increase the input. And how do we do that? We invite you to literally rewrite your cell expression, leading to a higher quality of life and getting a better output by making sure that you're making appropriate lifestyle choices and how you eat, how you move, how you think, and as you create healthier lifestyle choices. You trip the switches in the appropriate direction, and then you overlay this with proper spinal alignment so the nervous system doesn't have any interference. At this point, you get an authentic experience of your experience. You're in congruence with what's happening in your reality, and that's when you can lead a happy, healthy life free of interference and dysfunction.